Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Chat with Chaps. This is a brand new series called Championship Check-In, where we analyse the first month, in this instance, of the Championship and give you a little bit more detail of what's been going on in and around the Championship with, of course, a focus on our Millwall. And today we are joined by two very special guests, one slightly more special than the other one, if I'm being totally honest. But welcome in Mr. Benjamin Bloom to Chat with Chaps. How you doing, mate?
I'm feeling very guilty after you just buried the other Ben there in the introduction. Poor fella. That's brutal, chaps.
Oh, he loves it. I'm sure he'll give me a lot of that back throughout the...
Well deserved. Write that receipt, yeah?
And of course, my trusted right arm, Mr. Ben Green. How are you doing, mate?
Well, I was all right until you just buried me, mate. But yeah, looking forward to having a chat with ultimately Championship royalty. Huge fan of your show,
thank you,
Benjamin. So yeah, looking forward to having a chat, mate.
No, definitely. Well, look, we are 1 month in and 4 games in, and it's you can't read much into the league table after 4 games, but we're just going to put it on screen to show where the early running is. And this is what the league table looks like. So Sunderland have taken maximum points from their opening 4 games, have looked, very impressive. On the other end of the scale, you've got Cardiff, only 1 point from their opening 4 games. And of course, you've got our beloved Lions in 15th with 4 points from 4 games, which extrapolated, of course, of season would give you 46 points, which would, in some seasons, see you safe, in some seasons, not so much. But we can't read too much into it. But come to you first, Mr. Bloom. What have you made of Millwall's start?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because for the first couple of games, it was, this doesn't smell too good, taking lead. Because there was the two, the high scorers to begin with, and they worked in both of the worst ways possible that you wouldn't want them to, i.e. in one game, you kind of, which way round was it? It was the Watford game, you went behind, came back, and then lost. And then in the Bristol City game, you went behind, actually then took the lead and then lost. So you're kind of looking at that thinking that doesn't, there's lots of red flags for that. Then my understanding is Tanganga got fit and you got 2 clean sheets and 4 points from the next 2 games. And probably we'll talk about the business later because that's not really kicked in yet, has it? That's for the next international break where you'll be able to talk about the business. But it's worth flagging up Watmore as well, who I think is, if I say overperformed, you can tell me whether that's unfair or is performing well.
Ben, what's your take on overperform versus maybe just hit his sweet spot?
Yeah, I've been questioning Duncan Watmore's durability at Championship level. I think obviously he's had a lot of injuries, not only for us but throughout his career. You can't argue with his start. I'm delighted for him. As I say, I probably was a person that was looking for him to move down the pecking order with us and he'd sort of become a squad player more than a starter for us. But look, he's been excellent, right? I think the key with him is obviously keeping him fit. The challenge is going to be when we start playing 2-3 games a week. Can he do that? But yeah, look, you can't argue with his start. He's been excellent. And yeah, ultimately has outperformed what we've seen from him previously in a Millwall shirt. So yeah, he's been excellent.
Well, we actually have at the moment the joint top scorer in the Championship in Mr. Duncan Watmore. He seems to have a new lease of life this season. I don't know if it's his haircut.
His new haircut, mate. Yeah,
it's his new haircut. Honestly,
it's what they're saying about Salah as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone the other way. So Watmore's grown his hair a lot longer, and he now looks like he's got that sort of De Bruyne-esque, and he doesn't look as ginger anymore. It's weird. But he's performing superbly, and I think overall we just look fitter as well this season. Historically we've had slow starts, and I'm not saying this one's been fantastic, but I do think we should have more points than we have, and we look a lot fitter in my view. I don't know if you chaps would agree with that.
Well, you see them every week, I don't. But if you told me what is the prerequisite for a Gary Rowett player compared to a Neil Harris player, a Gary Rowett player needs to be tactically switched on, follow the instructions, stay in the right place. A Neil Harris player needs to run. Yeah. So if you, even without seeing them, I would expect that to be the case. And we're all laymen in terms of sports science, but you just don't want that big, huge kind of energetic start to the season, and then you're done by February or worse. everyone's knackered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's hopefully where the squad depth comes in, and we'll talk a bit about our summer transfer window in a minute, and the I don't know what word to describe it. The interesting deadline day that we had that saw us sign an unknown 19-year-old for a record-breaking fee, and then sell Zian Flemming. But we will come on to that. But you touched on there Neil Harris, and there's been a lot in the press, a lot in the media. Neil Harris himself has come out in a lot of interviews where he clearly isn't happy with some things going on at the club. He's alluded to not necessarily being happy with the recruitment and some of the processes that sit behind recruitment. But what's your view on, I guess, is Neil Harris the right man for Millwall, Benjamin?
Can I hear from Ben first on that?
Yeah, I think as a Millwall fan, you can't get more Millwall than Neil Harris, right? First and foremost. I think a lot of questions that came into this season was, could our play style evolve, or could Neil Harris evolve as a coach, a manager? And I think just seeing some of the early stats after 4 games, i.e., whether you're an XG believer or not, our XG has been really strong. We've missed the most amount of big chances in the league, so we're clearly creating more. Obviously, the issues in the first couple of games, we were conceding a lot as well. But I think the types of goals that we've scored, you look at Romain Esse's first goal at Bristol City, it was a really well-worked goal. You saw the goal we scored against Sheffield Wednesday last week. Josh Coburn's, again, it was a really well-worked goal. Not something you'd really typically associate with a Millwall Neil Harris team. So I think as long as he's happy, Benjamin, and we evolve as a club, which we are seemingly doing, and I mean that in a sense of you always need a bit of Millwallness or a Millwall type player and way in the side, coupled with that bit of quality in the final third, which we've lacked, I would say, through recent seasons. If we can have those and Neil Harris can implement those, there's no one better to manage Millwall, in my opinion.
So what's the problem with the recruitment then? Was there a staffing change in the close season? Am I right about that? Because, I mean, I'll ask you that question and I'll put to you, I've got it in front of me here, that I don't know what the strategy is looking at that list of players. Is that the issue, that it's a bit, well, because not to typecast Neil Harris, but if I'm recruiting for Neil Harris, I want a couple of nice wingers. I want a couple of massive centre-backs. I want good bustling midfielders, and I want a goal scorer and someone who can run for him. Do you know what I mean? That's whether that's evolving or not, you can tell me. But is that what the issues with the recruitment are? That it's a bit hodgepodgey, and who's doing it now? Who's head of recruitment?
So it's a chap called Steve Gallen that was at.
Oh, is he Kev Gallen's brother?
Yes, Kevin Joe Gallen's brother. Yeah,
right, okay, I know him. Yep.
He was at QPR and he was at Charlton most recently. He's in now, and I think just to touch on, this is why personally I make my stance clear that I think Neil Harris is the right man for Millwall at the minute. I really, really do. And you've got, and this is, I'm not going to talk about their credibility at all, but I'm just going to talk about the people that are kind of running the club. You look at Steve Gallen, new to Millwall. You look at our new CEO, Mark Fairbrother. He is new to being a football CEO, right? Obviously, we had Kavanagh before. Whether like him or loathe him, very experienced. Mark Fairbrother, brand new to this game. We also have a new head of commercial, which I think been there less than a year. And I believe our sports science person has also been there around about a year. So you've got a lot of...
And Berylson Jr. right at the top as well.
Exactly. So there's either a lot of... And again, this is not to say they can't do the job. This is just saying there isn't a lot of experience there. and there's also not a lot of Millwall experience. So I think having Neil Harris, and Benjamin, you've said this before many times on podcasts, Millwall is a unique club. And you have to have some Millwallness as part of it, wouldn't you agree?
You either have to have some, or you have to understand what some is, or you have to learn to have some. One of those kind of three things. I think what's difficult, because there's going to be two answers to this. There's going to be the answer that Millwall fans give, and there's going to be the answer that everybody else gives. And the problem is that everybody else can't quite cope with the fact of when someone is managing Cardiff and they're a year 2 parachute team and they're in the Championship playoffs, and then they're kind of managing Gillingham and then Cambridge and it's in the lower divisions. And I'm not saying this is right, most football fans, when they see a manager move down a division, that's it. They're not going back up again. They were good for the Championship for that time, and now they're, I know Gillingham had money, but Cambridge just seemed a bit strange that he was almost too eager to get in and work. But maybe he'd been typecast as the Millwall bloke, and he was only in a high-powering Championship job, and I don't know. I mean, was he ever really going to win those playoffs with Cardiff, with sort of Fulham and Brentford, I think Swansea in there as well? Probably not. So he's just got to now prove himself that he isn't just the Millwall bloke he did a brilliant job the first time around, didn't he? Really, really, really impressive. And I think Millwall as a Championship club, in their current guise, other than Mr. Berylson Senior, have probably got the most to thank Neil Harris for getting them up there, leaving them there, and making them a viable club. But as people always say to me when I reference Daniel Farker in 2019 or Chris Wilder or whatever, if I'm referencing Neil Harris in 2018, 6 years ago. So there's that time lag as well. So that's a very hodgepodgey way of saying I don't know. I really don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Benjamin, to your point, and here's a question. Do you think Neil Harris could manage any other club in the Championship, or do you think any other club in the Championship would have looked at him when he was at Gillingham or Cambridge?
That's a great question.
You can be as brutal as you like about that.
No, but you've just qualified it, because you said, would any other club have looked at him? And I was about to say yes, but then you said when he was at Gillingham, which is an important distinction as well, isn't it? Could he manage any other club in the Championship? Of course he could. Yeah, he's an experienced football. I don't want to turn into Graham Souness, football man, but experienced football manager, obviously with excessive knowledge of Millwall, particularly. But I mean, look, if again, let's get into typecasting. Look at the kind of bounce he got at the end of last season. There'll be a lot of owners who'll go, right, we are struggling. Get me Neil Harris, get me 4-4-2, win some. I know he's playing 4-2-3-1, but you know what I mean. Win some games, up and at him, get him going. And I don't think he could just do that at Millwall. The age-old question with Millwall, though, is can you take them from middle of the road Millwall to playoff Millwall? That's the question of can he do that? Because that's what he'll be judged on. That's what you Millwall fans kind of want. And I don't see why it's unreasonable to expect a tilt and a challenge at that. So, no, he wouldn't have been looked at when he was at Gillingham or Cambridge than anyone else other than Millwall. But yes, now he's in there, he could manage another club. Is that not too weaselly and politician answer?
No, absolutely. And look, I think one of the questions we had as Millwall fans was, could he transition the here and now 13 games from last season, 13 cup finals, as he said, could he transition that into a full 46 game season and get the same results out of that aging squad that we had? So yeah, I think they're questions that we had even as Millwall fans. And so far this year, I think we certainly have seen an evolution in play style. As I said, just to reference a couple of goals that I did. But we have seen that. Do you not think, Chris?
We have, mate. And factually, we've created the most chances in the league. Factually. That's an Opta stat or whatever for you. To your point, we've seen an evolution of the playing style. I firmly believe that. Okay, it's only 4 games in, but we certainly have. And I think the goal that we scored, the first goal against Sheffield Wednesday, was some of the build-up play was outstanding. I have to say, I think Sheffield Wednesday were very poor, surprisingly poor.
Yeah. Weird.
But was that because they're not very good, or because we were excellent, or a bit of both? It's probably somewhere in the middle there. So I do think we're seeing an evolution of playing style, and whether that is enough to kind of where that will see us, finish up at the end of the season, who knows? But I think that Harris has basically said, right, this is how I need to play to win 13 cup finals, and it's going to be boring. I'm going to use the same 11 players that I know and trust. We're not going to take any risks. This is what we're going to do. That's your blueprint. This season, I think what we're seeing is that, but, a second version. And we're going to be doing a show next week, by the way, for those of you listening, that basically looks into what are the data points that show how differently we are playing. Some of those things are certainly in how high we're pressing, which is really interesting. So some of those things. So I definitely think, a roundabout way of saying, I think we have seen an evolution of the playing style. But my question back to you, gents, is now that the deadline has gone and the transfer business is all done for up until January at least, do we think the business that we have done gives Neil Harris the tools to make a push for the top half and potentially beyond? And Ben, I'll come to you first, Mr. Green, because I think you've got obviously a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more knowledge on Ivanovic, for example, that no one knew.
Yes, and I think this is going to be a bit of a political answer here. I think, yes, we have, if Neil Harris can forget about what's been going on off the field. There's obviously been a little bit of a power struggle, Benjamin. I don't know if you know that, between Steve Gallen and Neil Harris, we're just reading between the lines there, but there's clearly been a bit of a power struggle between this new manager and head coach role that Neil Harris seems to be in versus the recruitment team. I think if he can put...
Was Joe Edwards a head coach, or was he a manager?
He was the first one who came in as Millwall knew, a head coach versus manager. We've always had managers previously, but yeah, he was the one to buck that trend. I think if Neil Harris can move away from that, we can just say, look, this is the squad we've got now. These are the players we've got, more importantly. Then I don't see why not, because I do actually think our business has been quite good. The one that's gone under the radar, really, and probably because it's just been a loan signing from Cardiff, is Ryan Wintle. I think for what we've needed in midfield and his championship experience, we've spoken a lot about the players that we have signed this year lacking that. He's very experienced at this level, and he's going to bring a lot of quality, energy, but as I say, experience into that midfield where we're lacking a little bit, and I've got a lot of injuries at the moment. So, yeah, I do think so, mate.
As well for a period, Ben, I'm sure he was.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he's gone under the radar a little bit. I think it's quite a decent signing for us. If Ivanovic turns out like that, he's a 19-year-old kid, completely unheard of to pretty much all of us, right? But if he can sprinkle a little bit of magic, and for anyone that watched your show with the Vojvodina marketing director, he likened him to Alexander Mitrovic. So if we can get anything like that out of him, then we'll all be very happy, right? So yeah, I think as long as we can put the off-the-field issues, or Neil Harris can, to the back of his mind, I don't see why we can't start pushing up towards the top half of the table.
How long is Ivanovic injured for?
Good question. It's been a bit of a...
It wasn't a sarcastic question. I was genuinely interested.
No, we've been laughing. Yeah, we're laughing, Benjamin, because again, there's been... He obviously was in the Serbia squad, right? But he was selected by Serbia. We were told he was injured. Then there was question marks as to why has he gone out to the national squad. So it's been a bit of a...
And then he's been recalled back away from the Serbia national squad. So there's something going on there. He's either not as injured as the club thought he was, or he is, and Serbia have just ignored the club. We don't really know.
Or the club are trying to get him off international duty, and he's not actually injured.
Yeah, exactly.
No one knows.
Like that. Because he was pictured in training gear, like with no I think he had like something to do with his metatarsal where he was in full training gear out on the training pitch with Serbia. So don't really know, but then that's part of the not chaos, but the things that are going on behind the scenes at the moment, that something just doesn't appear quite right. But putting that to one side and focusing on the pitch, Benjamin, what did you make of our summer transfer business?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I'm gonna deliberately be really mean here. But if you sit here and say Ryan Wintle, he's great. He's a really experienced, does what it says on the tin, championship midfielder, right? I go, that's great. But 2 minutes ago, we were talking about you moving from middle of the table into the playoffs. Does having a really reliable, sturdy championship central midfielder as your best signing of the window do that job? Probably not. When you're looking at what the parachute teams and then the likes of Middlesbrough and Coventry who spend well and recruit well and have budget from other means. So then you are looking into what you were saying of coaching, which I dare say, if you look at my lot last season, it was just a managerial performance that got them past the parachute teams, and they didn't have better players. And then, the other thing is, can you, and everyone will say you're brilliant if you get it right, but there's a certain amount of luck. Can you sign a 19-year-old Serbian who's worth 10 million this time next year? That's the kind of deal. So my answer is no. If they were to get in the playoffs, it's probably going to be more to do with the coaching and bringing those players together rather than just, it's not like I'm seeing a player who you're like, oh, wow, he's going to be Millwall's best player and you've probably sold that player. Do you know what I mean?
Well, we should talk about
go ahead.
Going as well. I think it's fair to say Tanganga was an excellent acquisition. I think that to pick him up permanently, I think Ben always uses this way of gauging a signing, and would Tanganga get in, a top 10 championship side? I think he would. And I think that's where you can gauge. So he was.
I don't think there's many teams he wouldn't get in just to jump in them. I think he's that good in the championship. I don't think there's many sides he wouldn't get into.
Agreed. I think he's we've coined this Rolls Royce of a defender. This is how we feel very lucky to have him. Let's put it that way. But one player that did go out the door was Zian Flemming. So Zian, signed for us a couple of years ago, had a great first season, goals, assists. A lot of those goals did come in patches, though, in fairness. But and then had quite a drop off last season. Couldn't quite work out whether the drop-off was purely in numbers or whether it was in performances. Probably a little bit of both. I think also you had Gary Rowett try and shoehorn him on the left-hand side at times, which just didn't work. Constant changing of systems. And then I think his lack of very, very good technical player. No one's ever questioned that. But his lack of physical attributes in the sense of his running and his pressing and things means I'm not actually sure he would work in a Neil Harris system. But I think in a Burnley system, I think you will see Zian Flemming thrive. But what's your view on that move, Benjamin?
I thought Burnley already had about 8 kind of wide goal-scoring forwards as well. It's very championship, isn't it? On the last day of the window, the year one parachute team nicks the best player. I say best player, better than me if he dropped off last season. I mean, you argue Tanganga's the best player, fine. But certainly the biggest goal scoring threat in someone's squad, and it's like ready-made, get you promoted this season, discard next season when you're in the Premier League type signing, isn't it? But I remember all the rumblings last summer on Flemming.
Yeah.
Rightly so when you look at the numbers. There was part of me that did think when I saw Millwall under Rowett that what other club is Flemming going to go to where he got used in a system where it was basically, we're going to keep a clean sheet, give you the ball, and you're allowed to shoot all the time. Yeah. do you know what I mean? Because that's not going to be the system at at Burnley, he's absolutely going to be told, don't shoot from outside the box, isn't it? It's, you know, we're pattern of play, and where's my Scott Parker rule book and textbook on when you're allowed to pass and when you're not. So it's a tough one, isn't it? You wouldn't like to see it be a complete bust, because obviously you guys have grown quite fond of the player, and it's one of those ones where, remember Tom Cannon last year went to Leicester for 8 million, and I'd know how many steps he even took on the pitch last season, let alone how many goals he scored. You don't want it to be.
And
you
now
don't want to be
Stoke, right.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to be that kind of guy, do you? So, I'll plead the fifth on that and wait and see how it pans out. But I can see more reasons why it wouldn't work at Burnley than why it would, strangely. But I do accept your point. Cash in, you know. I always quote Kieran Dyer, who told me, it's a good name drop that, when he got sold from Ipswich, they received £6 million, and they signed Gary Croft, John McGreal, Jermaine Wright, and Marcus Stewart. And Kieran Dyer said, am I a better player than all of those guys? Yes. Would they beat me in a 4-on-1? Yes. So sometimes, you know, spreading quality is better than having one quality player. So regardless of that, it could still work out quite nicely for Millwall, assuming your Serb is going to be fit pretty soon, right?
Well, yeah, because that's the player that supposedly came in instead of Zian, right? So if the fees are to be believed, we will receive a minimum of 7 million for Zian, which is frustrating because I've reason to believe we had offers of over 10 million last summer and didn't take them, but is what it is. And then the Serbian lad, about £2.5 million. So is there money left in the kitty for January or to go bigger next summer? Who knows? But to your point, if in order for us to, you know, when I look at some of the clubs you quoted there around Coventry, Middlesbrough, even Bristol City, they sell at the right time and they reinvest. You know, Bristol City sold Alex Scott. You know, they sold obviously the Tommy Conway to Middlesbrough, but then they brought in Sinclair Armstrong for 2-3 million, who looked the real deal. So that's what we need to do more of us as a club. So I'm kind of all here for it.
Mate, we've been saying that since 2017, to be fair.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
And we've, you know, Ben and I, we did a show, didn't we, Ben? I'll let you take on this point. But we're just putting sticky plasters over the top all the time when it comes to our recruitment, aren't we, Ben?
Yeah, and I think I'm hoping now we're starting to see some progression, but some long-term planning into these players, because for me, I was always one with Flemming. Look, we were never going to keep him forever. It was how much we were going to get for him, and was it going to be close to the initial fee and outlay that we'd obviously paid for him. We've got a healthy profit on it. It is now about, can we identify other players that relatively buy low, sell high sort of methodology, right? If Ivanovic turns out to be an Alexander Mitrovic, we're gonna do all right, but they're big ifs. But we are starting to trend in the right direction in terms of the types of profiles that can turn a profit in our recruitment.
Remember, you can build stars as well. And I'm looking at SA.
Exactly. Our youth academy is generally quite good. We do tend to bring players through. And again, look, I don't think we're going to be keeping SA forever, but he's just signed a new contract, Benjamin. So he's now locked in for a few more years, but ultimately might add another zero when that big team does come in for him. So look, our selling of players has been awful. There's no other way or word to describe it. We need to sell at the right times. And as a club, we haven't been good enough at doing that. So hopefully now we have started that changing the dial, and we are starting to buy players or sell players at the right time. And that the proof will be in the pudding, right, with the players that we've bought in. I think the one that you touched upon earlier, Chris, was the Coburn deal. I think we've all been disappointed, and I think it was been widely touted that we wanted to get, or we initially went in for a permanent deal for him. That didn't happen for whatever reason. Then there was going to be an option. That didn't happen. He's obviously scored in his debut. He looks like he could be a real asset for us, but an asset we'd clearly like to have kept. I hope we haven't just developed a young talent for Middlesbrough.
Sounds like you're going to.
Yeah. Why on earth we didn't go all out and try and sign him, I don't know. He's just, you know, I know it's only been in 60 odd minutes of football.
Sorry to interrupt. Was Conway already signed at Borough when?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
So,
carry on. Sorry.
No. The fact that Carrick let him go out suggests that he's. I think a deal was there to be done, but I think we may have just balked at the asking price. But if we'd have paid $3 million for him based on that one performance, and yes, it's one performance, but you can just kind of tell some of the attributes he's got and what he's going to bring to us. I think he's going to be excellent. And you mentioned Romain Esse there. He's been outstanding so far this season, and I think
go figure.
Well, yeah, new contract time. I'm sure he's
he's just a great player, isn't
he? He is, but I honestly think he will end up being our record sale in the next 18 months to 2 years.
Who's it, Saville?
Saville at the minute for $8 million. I think if you're a better man, I'm not sure there's a market for Millwall's record sales, but I can see that happening. He has been a joy to watch so far this season.
Was Saville to Middlesbrough?
Yes, and then we got him back.
See, there's a weird irony there because you pulled their pants down on that one, so maybe they owe you one.
Yeah.
Fair comment.
They're still paying for it, I think, Benjamin.
Right, yeah.
Saville's story.
Sorry, mate, I was just going to jump in on Esse there, if that's all right. And I was just going to say the improvement we've seen from last year to this year, though, Chris, it's been completely different. And there was obviously talk about him leaving potentially in the summer. And my argument to that was, well, what numbers has he really been putting up in the Championship? And he wasn't really doing anything, but we've now started to see that end product with him as well. He's got 2 goals this season, one albeit in the Cup, but we're now starting to see that attacking output where you could see someone coming in for £10 million plus for a young England international. So I think that's the difference. And we've seen, I don't want to sort of labour on his defensive attributes, but Neil Harris was big on that as to why he wasn't playing the back end of last year. I know a very different circumstance, but he wasn't playing or getting the side because he wasn't doing the off-the-ball work. But we've seen that with him this year as well. So I think he's really transformed his game. And I can now see, as I said, if someone coming with a £10 million plus bid, I'd go, yeah, I could see that. Last year, not so much.
His physicality as well, Ben, right? Like every single game, I feel like he gets bigger and stronger, and he's definitely doing some work somewhere, right? In the gym or something, because he just seems, his frame just seems a lot bigger, which I think to be successful in the Championship, you have to have that. And I think there's probably you probably put those two things together.
Mate, I just quickly come in on that. I went to Ipswich Fulham at the weekend, and after about 10 minutes, I haven't been to a Premier League game this season. I'm like, hang on a minute. Premier League players are either absolutely brilliant technically or absolutely brilliant physically or both. So, no, you're totally right. And there's always the ripple down or drop down, whatever, getting the trickle down. That's the metaphor I'm trying to use. Trickle down effect of whatever tactically is happening in the Premier League will end up happening in the Championship. And yeah, there are some physical beasts to compete with in the Premier League. So yeah, you almost, unless you're technically brilliant, you almost have to do that kind of work anyway. Sorry, carry on.
No, and I think that's what SA is doing. It would shock me if he's still here in 18 months' time, but we'll see. But this is the Championship check-in, so I do want to segue a little bit to talk about the Championship and get your view, Benjamin, on just a couple of questions at the top of mind for me, which is, which team has surprised you, either for the good or the bad in terms of their start. And then I know you've done a show on this recently, so maybe we can also plug that one here as well. But just who has had the kind of best and worst recruitment as well to kind of go along with that? We'd love to hear your thoughts on those two questions.
If you say us, Benjamin, you're not invited back. As for the worst.
I mean, look, you can't look really past Sunderland. Nobody had Sunderland. Well, actually, Gab Sutton, I was taking the mick out. I did a podcast with Paul. We'll give Gab Sutton a shout out. We'll let him have his flowers while they're top of the league. But yeah, I did a podcast with him. I was like baiting him. God, talk more about how Sunderland are going to win the league, Gab. We'll clip all this out and show it to you end of the season when they're 16th or something. And now they're top. So they've had an amazing start. Obviously, Watford have too. Luton's the big surprise to me, where Luton have just been the most sensible, consistent, excellently, but always punch their way or above. And you think, oh, here come Luton with their clever recruitment in a year one parachute team. But as you would know, being fans of a club who are like this, and I say this with absolute love, some clubs are better as underdogs. And Luton are definitely one of them, and all of a sudden it's like you can sign a McGuinness at centre back for 10 million quid, and everyone knows you've got more money, and you've got nice, pretty floodlights at your stadium after you went up last year, and all of a sudden the expectations are massively high. Oxford as well. I know you can win 2 games and be 9th in the league after 4 games. I get it, but I actually think Oxford are going to be a bloody nuisance for a lot of teams this year. I think their manager's pretty shrewd with his kind of tournament football approach, I call it, where you just win this one up, sit in, and they really mean it when they attack. You see proper counter-attacking with sprints forward, proper, right, I'm going to take... I bet they're told, when you counter, take 1 touch and either play forward or shoot. Because that's what I'm seeing from them. A lot of teams are just, nope, control the game, keep the ball at all costs. Don't shoot. We were joking about Flemming at Burnley earlier in the show. But, yeah, I've quite enjoyed Oxford. In terms of transfer windows, it's really hard to tell because, everyone assumes that every transfer ever is going to work out well. Spoiler alert, guys, they're not going to, but we don't know which ones are going to be complete dead losses and flops, don't we? Let me give you an answer of two of just Sheffield United and Leeds, where I think they've done quite well to get out of dodge when it could have gone badly wrong, where they were selling big star names. Burnley to a certain extent as well. I think you lot as Millwall fans would have been quite pleased if there'd been a few worse windows, because you've been like, okay, those are teams we can target to be finishing above now. So I'll give you a bit of a non-answer that. I'll give you a proper answer next time on that. But yeah, it could have been a lot worse for Sheffield United and Leeds. I think they've done all right under the circumstances.
What do you think about? I can ask you about 2 teams now for different reasons. Blackburn and Plymouth. So Blackburn, they had a mad sort of late flurry to their transfer window, didn't they? A load of players came in and players I'd never heard of. The lad up top looks pretty good. They've had a good start. They're in the top 6, obviously, first 4 games, but they've looked a lot better than I thought they would. A lot of people had them tipped to be in the bottom, certainly the bottom 6, possibly even the bottom 3. So I'd love to get your thoughts on Blackburn. And then another question, this one actually comes from Mr. Green himself, is around Rooney. And, obviously his start to his career at Plymouth. And we'd love to just, pick your brains on those 2 teams as well.
So Blackburn are overperforming, aren't they, by the look of it? But I've got to say, they seem to have recruited fairly well. If you're going to lose, because everyone's looking at it and going, right, hang on a minute. This team were bombing it down the league in the last half of last season, and they had the division's top scorer, and they now don't have the division's top scorer. Where does that line continue on to? There's a fairly obvious answer, isn't it? But what we do know about John Eustace is, and we interviewed him on my channel actually, and he said outright his philosophy as football is first and foremost, you're hard to beat. Words right out of the guy's mouth. So he's going to be
well.
Exactly. He's going to be, but Gary Rowett teams don't. We say about Birmingham at the end of last season. Gary Rowett teams over 46 games, if he's the manager, don't get relegated, do they? And that's the deal for Blackburn, isn't it? So they've overperformed. Plymouth. So in the American news, they have Trump derangement syndrome, where people can't form a sensible opinion on Donald Trump because he's so divisive. You either feel you have to say he's the greatest thing in the world or say he's the Antichrist or whatever. And let's not have a political discussion because I'm not here for that whatsoever. But there's definitely Rooney derangement syndrome where we can't have a sensible conversation about the poor guy. He's either going to be the worst manager in history or well, there's not very many people arguing for his side. I try and be down the middle. Look, the first game was atrocious, wasn't it? And it looked like he was going to be sacked by the end of September, let alone October. All I would say, I'll answer your question by asking a question. Given Plymouth's trend and the fact the momentum from League One has gone and they lost their manager and they had the window that they had, do you really expect them to have more than 2 points from their opening 4 games and be in 22nd or be roughly around that position in the table? Probably not. So the contrarian, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
The contrarian shithouse part of my personality says, I think it'd be quite funny if Ruby does really well and everyone has to eat some humble pie. But it's going to be hard, man. It's going to be hard.
Just on that as well, and the reason why I asked it, Benjamin, was because I was actually really surprised that Rooney took that job. When I always think that when you're a manager on a bit of a rescue mission, you kind of want to take the easiest job possible. And I feel like Plymouth just isn't that for him, because if he fails again, which might not be down to his coaching ability, it might just be down to what the factors you mentioned there. The promotion buzz has dropped off. They've sold their best players now. How do you expect him to succeed? So I think it was a surprising job that he took, in my opinion.
I thought, and yeah, I agree, and I thought it was equally surprising that Plymouth gave him the job, because if we sat here this time last year and I asked you who's the number 1 performing club in the EFL, considering Luton weren't in the EFL at that point, because don't talk to me about jurisdiction and which league people are in this bloody week, though. I tell you, after the Leicester thing, but you would have Plymouth like right up the top as one of the most organised, sensible, League 2 up, League 1 up, Championship, here we go. And yeah, it just seems odd. But hey, look, I'll stand in ovation if it turns out to be a really, really clever hire, and there's something that we're not seeing from Birmingham and MLS and bits and bobs of Derby, where there were admittedly giant mitigating factors.
Absolutely. And last question from me, mate, on the Championship. Otherwise, you might run the risk of going for every team. But Sheffield Wednesday, we touched upon them, sort of played us. They were a team that I tipped, I think, a lot of people did, for top 10. I think in your prediction show, you had them in the top 10. Just surprised at what I've seen so far. Again, it might be a bit of bias having seen them play us in the last game. But yeah, I've been a bit surprised with their start. We've all sort of lauded Danny Roll, haven't we, as the next, certainly, Premier League manager in the league. But yeah, just thoughts on Sheffield Wednesday. Again, I know that there's been a lot of ins and outs there in terms of personnel, playing wise. But yeah, thoughts on Sheffield Wednesday start?
I think you're being a bit fair to them, mate. I thought the window was quite sensible. They got players in nice and early. Obviously, they've got the continuity of I always say, if you have a manager in season A and in season B, you've got more continuity than 90% of Championship clubs, haven't you? If they go right the way through one season and then the pre-season and that pattern of players existing. Don't get it. I don't get it in the slightest. They won 4-0 on the opening day, and I'm like, oh, okay.
I think we all did, right? We thought all our predictions are coming true.
They're not going to finish 9th. They're going to finish 5th or something ridiculous like that. But let's try and keep cool. I think you're right that Danny Roll is good. He's got some issues at the moment to sort out, but let's assume that you are right and he is good and they'll sort it out. And just a bizarre, to not just to win 1 and lose 3, but to be that good and then to be that bad seems very peculiar. So either he's still good and we need to calm down, or he had the luckiest escape. He chanced his way out of. And come on, even as I say that, that's ridiculous. He didn't chance his way out of. They were doomed, weren't they? And he did a brilliant job. So I'm going to assume that they're going to come back around and it's all going to be okay for Sheffield Wednesday.
And clearly just ran into an all-firing Millwall side last time out.
Of course, yeah. Let's
they can't help that.
Let's put some positive on the Lions, yeah?
Absolutely.
Right, gents, we're going to close out with a quick fire round for you, Benjamin. Just one-word answers. Before we do, for those of you listening, please remember to subscribe, like, and share. We are doing everything this season for Cancer Research UK, so your likes, comments, shares, subscribes are much appreciated. So thank you very much. And Benjamin, just quickly, where can, if those of you, for some, if they've been living under a rock, and
I was going to say, where have they been?
But where can people find your channel?
Yeah, it's a Benjamin Bloom football channel. And if you type in Benjamin Bloom on YouTube, my irritating face will pop up and I'll be being gobby about football. But yeah, I'm an Ipswich Town fan, so it's Championship content. But we are dipping into the Premier League a little bit. I know that irritates a lot of Championship fans, and some people like it, but whatever, I'm doing it. If your team's crap for 20 years and then gets a double promotion, I challenge you not to do the same thing, right?
Totally fair. Totally fair. We can only hope and dream. Right, quick fire round to finish up then. So, give me one player that stood out for you so far in the Championship this season.
Mark Harris, Oxford.
Good answer. Who's going to win the Championship? Obviously, I know you've done your predictions, but are you sticking with that?
When's this coming out?
This weekend.
Check out my new 1 to 24 table, which will be coming out on Sunday.
Love it. Let's see if he's still got leads or not, guys. Let's see if he's got leads or not.
Yeah, I had leads at the start of the season, yeah.
So does that mean my next question, which is give me one team to go down? Just one team. You haven't got to tell me the bottom three.
Oh, one team to go down. See, I like all these clubs. Portsmouth, but I really like the club.
Yeah, fair. I think Millwall.
And I like John Mousinho.
Very good young man.
Please come on my channel, John.
One team to get in the playoffs.
Okay, I mean, can I just pick an easy one?
Millwall.
Or do you want like a dark horse one or something? Sheffield United. I don't think Sheffield United will go automatic. I think they'll definitely be in the playoffs.
Totally fair. Top scorer in the league, if you have to predict right now.
Latte Lath. Oh, Middlesbrough's still making loads and loads of chances, and he's still good if he doesn't get hurt.
Or if he doesn't want to come and join Ipswich.
No comment.
Last few. Who top assist in the league?
It will be a Leeds player. But Nonto doesn't get any assists anymore. Go on, here's a shout. He's only played one game. Manuel Solomon of Leeds.
Cool, that's a good shout.
And we've only seen him for 90 minutes. So that's up there with Gab's No, it's not, is it? Carry on.
He's the Tottenham lad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You had us at 16th in your original prediction. I won't ask you for your prediction because people are gonna watch your show. But can you just say, has it changed much from what you've seen in the opening 4 games?
It's probably not going to have changed much. I think a lot will depend on me weeding out all the teams that I thought were going to be better than Millwall, who clearly aren't going to be better than Millwall, and then we'll kind of reset around there. Do I see you zoom in to the level that either Rowett or Harris Part 1 had, or you framed it really well earlier in the show of the 13 cup finals or whatever. You can't do that over 46 games, can you? So I'm probably going to be bumping it up, but let me give that some more thought.
Yeah,
16th does seem harsh when I'm sat in front of 2 of you.
I'll be honest, I don't think it does, and that's
okay. You know more about it than me, so I'll take that.
Okay, last 2. Favorite footballer, and you can either give me or you can give me both answers of like ever, as in past, and then current footballer.
Well, I actually get emotional talking about it because sadly he's been diagnosed with motor neurone disease, which is really, really horrible when these are your heroes. But my favourite player of all time is Marcus Stewart, who Ipswich signed from Huddersfield when they could never get promoted. And he was just a magician, just left-footed striker, scored every type of goals, bit flamboyant, bit of flair. I know you're going with cancer research, but the Derby Rimmer MND charity is the one I look at. And it's just hard, isn't it, when these people are your heroes and then you realise they're human. So Marcus Stewart, and very sorry to hear that about Marcus Stewart. And, shocking. He's you can see the grip's gone a little bit from his hands, but he's still. We've seen him at the club, and it's great to have him there. And there's a lot of support and a lot of knowledge, but man, that disease is awful. Yeah, horrible one. Well, thoughts are with a certain Ipswich. Yes, sorry, sure. I didn't mean to make it go all pious and serious. No, sorry, not at all, mate. I mean, you know, Millwall have had a fair few things going on recently. So let's finish with Millwall then. Last question, Benjamin, is
Give us your most memorable game or moment that involves Millwall.
Right, I can tell you exactly what that is. So I went to Millwall Fulham at the end of 2017-18. Spoiler alert, you're going to lose 3-0, okay?
Oh, yeah, I remember that game.
But you are on a mighty, mighty run and you might get in the playoffs, right? And I drove in. I took my missus, actually, which gave me quite a good sense of just how spiky it was down Millwall that day for a London derby. I think it was a bank holiday. I think some drinks had been taken during the day and a few people might have left work at midday in preparation for the game. And I got in there and I'm in the, what's the main stand called again? Sorry.
Kitchener?
The Kitchener. I'm in the Kitchener upper tier and it's noisy. And then the game kicks off and you guys nearly took the lead. Jake Cooper hit the bar after 4 minutes. And Fulham are on fire, by the way. They're like unbeaten as well. And at that moment, the loudest noise I have ever heard in any football stadium I have ever been to transpired. And I actually managed to drink it in. I heard the mill as you got a corner and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. I thought, my God. It was like, you know, like in a movie when there's like super effects going on the stadium and it's like lighting up ultraviolet or whatever. It was incredible. I have never, ever seen an atmosphere like that. Yes, ultimately he went on to lose the game, but just at that point, I have never heard anything like that. And that's why I call Millwall a unique club.
That's just made me go funny. You just
clip that one out.
I can't even talk. Yeah, it's just made me go funny.
I think I'm going to enjoy my weekend better for that. So thank you for that.
Clip that one out. I'll have that one. Yeah.
Right, chaps.
It's true, dudes. It's the truth. I'm not telling a story or acting. You know me. I tell the truth, don't I? Genuinely incredible noise.
I think we've had a few good atmospheres over the time, haven't we? Chaps? We're very fortunate to have that, and I know some people like it, some people don't. When I say that, I'm talking about other clubs, but it's a unique chant. Is the
It's
Mill
brilliant.
chant.
It's brilliant. And if anyone else tried to do it, I hope they would be shut down and shut up in seconds. It's like, no, that does not, because you know how chants all move around. I don't know what you call it. The big mill is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. And someone told me at Wembley in the playoff final, there was one that went like 25 minutes or something. All like rotate.
Utterly brilliant. To have a breath. So
utterly. Well, I do a bit of singing, so I actually know. That actually takes some skill, the breath control, to keep doing that. So yeah, brilliant. Sorry, carry on.
No, listen. We can't top that, so we'll end there on a high. But just want to say thank you both for coming on. Much appreciated. And
sorry, other Ben didn't get much to say, did he? With me waffling on.
No, you're far more important than I am, mate.
Stop it.
All right then, listeners. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this, the first dinner in this new series. Thank you both for coming on. Enjoy your weekends. Bye for now.